Will the real Jen McCabe please stand up? Because who is this lady on the stand? Day 7 of Karen Read's trial wrapped up today, and here's what happened. Hi, I'm Cindy Rushing. I'm a criminal defense attorney in the state of Michigan. Now let's talk about it. The morning started out with Brennan's continued direct examination of Jen. He asked her about the layout of John's house. He asked her if he had surveillance, and he also showed her a few photos. And in one of the photos, she actually identified Karen's SUV in the driveway of John's house. She testified that she called 911 that morning, and then they played the 911 call. One thing that was quite interesting to me is that she said to the 911 dispatch person that there's a man laying in the yard versus identifying him as John. That was a little off to me. She described feeling shocked. She said it was a chaotic scene. She said that Karen was basically running around like a ping pong ball and basically saying like, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? And over and over and over. And basically that she was going crazy. She said that Karen asked her to search about hypothermia and how long does it take to die in the cold after the police arrived. And also she explained that the typos in the search could have been due to her MS because sometimes it causes her fingers to not be able to work when they're like really cold. He went into the house, which was her sister's, and she woke her sister up. Shortly thereafter, her husband made it to the scene. After speaking with police, she actually called Lieutenant Lank back to tell him about Karen saying, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. She didn't tell him that when she first talked about it. And she also said how she met with Trooper Proctor and Sergeant Buchanan at her house. And then Action Jackson came in for the cross-examination, and I could not believe the entire demeanor switch between Jen's testimony from the first trial and this testimony. It was like night and day. Started off by asking Jen when the last time she talked to Carrie was, and she said that it was last night, and that basically Carrie was asking if her girls were going to go to school or if they're going to stay home and things like that. She said she was aware that Carrie testified last week, but that they have never discussed each other's testimony. Yeah, okay, save that for someone who believes that. Basically said they've discussed they've discussed the case, they've discussed the morning and everything that happened that morning, but they've never discussed their testimony. Again, I don't believe that for 1 second. She was asked about how many times she had spoke with prosecutors leading up to her testimony today, and she said between 4 and 5, and that she started speaking with Brennan earlier this year. She was asked if they talked about her direct testimony and her cross-examined testimony from the first trial. She said they watched parts of it and they discussed it, and Jackson did what Jackson does best. He called her on her bullshit. He straight up asked her if she was told to change her demeanor or be different this time around when testifying. Because if you guys recall, in the first trial, it was not this amicable during cross-examination. But she said no, she wasn't told that. She was just told to slow down and answer the questions to the best of her memory. Again, I don't believe it. And she was asked if she was asked these questions about her kids and their sports and things like that to give her a softer appearance or a softer approach. And she said no. But I think that Jackson hit the nail on the head with that because it's clear that this was a problematic witness the first time around, and her demeanor being totally different is actually quite crazy to me. Again, covering up a cover-up. You know, you guys, it's just not looking good for the prosecution. And right now, their witnesses they're just not doing so great. You gotta keep that same energy from the first trial. You gotta keep it. We're all about consistency around here. There was a lot of questions showing about how cozy she, along with everybody else in this trial as witnesses, are with people in the police departments in both Canton and in Boston. He showed that she's actually aware that Proctor is a family friend, essentially. It's just, there's a lot of connection here with the police department, the detectives, and all these things. Then there was an unseasonably long break where actually everyone was kind of removed from the courtroom except the attorneys and close family members, and nobody really knows what that was about. When they came back, Jackson asked about her interactions with the U.S. Attorney's Office for Massachusetts and how these officers came to her house, and she didn't identify herself. They asked if she was there, and she said, no, I'm not the homeowner, closed the door. She then immediately received a phone call, and she said, she identified herself, and she said, oh, I need about 10 minutes to get ready. She let them in the house. She only talked to them briefly before kind of saying like, you know, I'm uncomfortable with this, and cut the interview short. But what's interesting is what happened during that 10-minute break of her getting ready. That getting ready included calling her husband, and it included calling none other than Carrie Roberts. Are we at all surprised at this point? She basically said that she called Carrie because they like to kind of keep each other informed and give each other heads up about this stuff. But just like the defense was trying to hint at, it's more likely that they were trying to get their stories straight and answer questions the same way, or know what questions to expect and to answer. But then after they left, she had to call them back and tell them that she actually spoke to more than 2 people during that 10-minute break. She actually talked to 5 different people. She said that she didn't intentionally keep that information from the officers. She had just forgot who she called in that really short amount of time. Again, not looking like a great, reliable, trustworthy witness here. They discussed the events at the waterfall. She said that John and Karen looked like a normal, happy couple. When asked about if Brian Higgins and Brian Albert were like fighting physically, she basically said like, oh, I can't really see. I don't really see that over there. You know, she's like trying to like play it off. And then if she said basically, essentially, if anything, it was like play fighting. That Brian Higgins and Brian Albert were already at 30 Fairview Road when she got there. She said that there was a Jeep parked out front by the mailbox and that it belonged to Higgins. We got into the good stuff and we got to hear about the German Shepherd Chloe. She said that she didn't recall seeing the dog when she went to wake her sister up. She didn't recall her being in there at all. She had no idea where the dog was. And she also recalled hearing stories about Chloe the dog being aggressive towards other dogs. Then we had lunch. There was a blown fuse in the courtroom, and we found out that there's going to be no testimony and no trial tomorrow. The one day that I had pretty much nothing going on, and we could have been hanging out all day together, and we don't get to. After lunch, she testified to seeing out the front storm door. She saw Karen's SUV. She also noted it moving forward towards the flagpole, and again moving past the flagpole, and to seeing tire tracks in the snow. She said that she texted John approximately 5 times between 12:27 a.m. and 12:45 a.m., and at least 4 of those times prompted a visit to the front door and her looking outside of it. She testified that when she looked out the door, she never saw John outside, never saw him on the lawn or anything like that. She never saw him out there. She said when she left, she was in the passenger seat of the vehicle. The vehicle did drive by the location where John's body was, but she said she was turning around having a conversation with people in the back. Jen's grand jury testimony was 227 pages in length. And yes, Jackson provided her with a copy of her transcript, basically saying like, show me where you said that Karen said, I hit him, versus the questioning side of that is, could I have hit him? Did I hit him? Because today Jen says that it's a statement that she said, I hit him. And every time prior, it was questionary in nature. Then the real Jen McCabe finally showed up. We finally saw that tension between Jackson and McCabe. This came out when Jackson was questioning her heavily about her statements to the law enforcement in interviews afterwards and things like that. Jackson said something along the lines of, it can't end this way, and Judge Cannoni told the jury they could not listen to that, and then asked her again about her grand jury question, saying basically that you didn't say that it was a statement. You never said that. And I get it, because you don't want to end a day that has a long break with a dull question or a bad question or a question that doesn't work in your favor. You want to end strong. And Judge Cannoni ended proceedings for the day, and the testimony will pick back up again on Friday morning. They're expecting the cross to take an additional 1.5 to 2 hours, and Brennan says he needs maybe 20 minutes on recross. That's your recap for day 7 of Karen's trial. Thank you for being here. Thank you for following along. And I hope we get to see a little bit more spice come Friday. We're officially 1 week in at this point. How are you feeling about the case so far? Do you think the prosecution is doing a good job or not?